Hello, I'm John Boyd, Manager of Law Enforcement Relations for Utility. Utility is a leading provider of innovative technology solutions designed to enhance operational efficiency and situational awareness for frontline professionals. I'm a retired sheriff from LaPorte County, Indiana, and served 34 years in law enforcement. I want to thank you for joining us today for our Space for Knowledge discussion, where we're joined by Chief Marty Corley of the Michigan City, Indiana Police Department and Andy Jussin, Product Manager for Utility Inc. Andy joins us today from the Utility headquarters located in Decatur, Georgia. Thank you both for joining us today. And Chief Corley, can you give us a little bit of a history and your background?
I've been with the Michigan City Police Department since 2000, 24 years of service here in this great department. I've had the pleasure of working in various operations from FTO and supervisor and the patrol division all the way to detective and narcotics investigator and investigations, SWAT team member and team leader for 18 years. And prior to being named chief in January of 2024, I was chief operations for the police department for 2 years. So I've been around a long time and believe a lot in the community engagement and relationships building with officers and other departments.
You certainly do, Chief, and I'm really proud of you. In full disclosure, you and I served in the same county, LaPorte County. I watched you come up, and you've risen through the ranks, and no one is more involved in their community than you are. You serve as president of the Board of Education for the Michigan City area schools, and also as chief. And I couldn't be more proud of you, and I'm honored that you're joining us here today.
Thank you.
Andy, I'm happy that you're here with us too. You bring a lot of knowledge and expertise. So give us a little bit of your background and your history.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, John. So I've kind of been in product management for roughly the last 20 years. I got my start in the gambling industry, working on several, I guess, projects from initial player tracking systems to some jurisdictional specific gaming software. And then ultimately we developed some of the original wide area network based progressive jackpot gaming systems. So think of slot machines across multiple casinos, all kind of feeding into one giant jackpot. After that, I transitioned over to online poker software and really kind of developing infrastructure that could run off kind of near, or I say near shore, but kind of offshore servers that resided in both Belize and Guatemala. Did that for about 3 years and then pivoted into the security space, working visitor management software for guarded gated communities, single multi-tenant buildings, and then distribution centers. And it was really kind of during that time where I got my, kind of taste for license plate recognition. And kind of our primary use case for license plate recognition was for either identifying repeat guests and kind of moving those through the community line, or kind of tracking contractors and vendors and their activity throughout communities and commercial facilities.
Thank you, Andy. Utility certainly is very lucky to have you. You are one of our brightest minds among some very, very bright minds with Utility in Decatur, Georgia. So again, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
And
thank
in
you,
this,
John.
in this space for knowledge discussion, we're going to delve into the topic of fixed automatic license plate recognition systems, also known as ALPR, and its benefits for law enforcement. We hope to equip our law enforcement leaders with knowledge on the effective application of ALPR technology. So, Andy, I'd like to start with you, and can you kind of give us a rudimentary explanation about ALPR and how does it work?
Yeah. So ALPR, as you mentioned, it's automated license plate recognition. So essentially, what that means is you have a device, typically a camera, that is able to detect a vehicle and take a snapshot of that vehicle. That snapshot is then analyzed by a AI engine, and that AI engine is trained to essentially recognize license plates within a vehicle. It's able to extract the characters off of that license plate, and then it's also able to determine the make, the model, the color, what type of vehicle, and in most instances, the issuing state for that license plate to kind of give a full picture of that vehicle. And then what it does, the system will essentially take that snapshot and that vehicle data and push it over to a platform that can be then used for reporting purposes. One aspect that deploying these from a law enforcement perspective is when that vehicle is analyzed and the license plate and other vehicle metadata is extracted from that snapshot, that information is actually able to be matched against a national or state or local hot list to then quickly alert law enforcement if there is a potential vehicle of interest, or as I call them, kind of bad actors that may be floating around that that the agency might not be aware of.
Andy, thank you for giving us that really thorough kind of foundation of ALPR and how it works. And I'd be curious with you, Chief Corley, in your experience, what are the primary advantages of using fixed ALPR?
So fixed ALPRs allows us to set a perimeter in our city, and also to be a force multiplier in areas that we are not able to be 24/7. Unfortunately, I don't have 2,000 officers like I would like to have, but with the numbers that we have and the technology of ALPRs, it allows us to be in areas consistently, even though we're not, there physically, but more consistently. And with the technology, we're able to be there and gain that evidence that we might need, or have that type of area of surveillance that we will need in order to further our investigations or make sure that the community is safe. We use that technology that way, and again, it really helps us have a more broader reach of the city without actually physically being there, and especially in some of those areas of concern where we sometimes don't have the resources to be there, on a more regular basis. We use it in that capacity, and it has worked out with us and has really advanced our tactics and our management of crime in certain areas.
Yeah, so you used a phrase that I keyed in on, and that was a force multiplier. And while you said it without directly saying it, I'm going to ask you this: you find it pretty cost effective?
Yes, I mean, it's the costs of implementing the ALPR technology compared to employing another physical body. It doesn't even match the savings that we are able to accrue, but still have that capabilities in that presence. With the technology is phenomenal, and again, it works out well for us here in Michigan City, and we'll continue to use the technology, and I'm just excited of the advancement of the technology that is being presented to law enforcement nowadays.
Perfect. And Andy is a product manager. How does the implementation of fixed ALPR systems compare to other surveillance technologies in terms of cost effectiveness?
So from a fixed ALPR perspective, I like to say that those systems can be somewhat self-sufficient, meaning really all that's required is a physical pole, whether it's an existing pole or a pole that the vendor is providing, and then it's just a camera and a solar panel. So you're really talking about three pieces of equipment that need to be installed versus some of the other technology, such as like a mobile ALPR unit or a portable or trailer-based unit that would require taking a vehicle out of service, a much more significant installation as far as running cabling and mounting cameras to vehicles. And then similarly to kind of this trailer or portable, you're going to be outfitting an existing trailer. So again, you're taking that trailer out of service, whether it's been deployed or not. There may be some additional updates as far as batteries or solar capacity to handle the addition of the ALPR system. So a fixed ALPR system is a very simplified installation. Really, kind of that term I like is you can be very self-sufficient.
I like that. So Chief Corley, explain how fixed ALPR systems can enhance your capabilities of any law enforcement agencies without the need for additional personnel.
So again, it allows us to, have that presence. It allows us to be more effective. It allows our people to make better decisions, and and helps us determine areas that need more attention, that might not need as much attention, but still we need to have those active patrols. Allows us to gain valuable evidence, and also not only build cases, but do some proactive, take some data for some proactive measures, so that we can eradicate some things or stop some things from happening in advance, all the way from accidents to bad driving behaviors, just any type of nuisance that can be detected, through the automation or through the technology that's used in this equipment. We are very pleased with the technology that we have. Utility has been a great partner to the Michigan City Police Department over the years, and we could continue the partnership. And just with this technology, we're able to not only police our area, but we're also able to reach out to other communities and not only help them, but they're able to help us with this technology without having to make that telephone call and figuring out who you have to talk to in that department. With this technology, we're able to grab that data or that evidence that we need and continue it. And same thing with departments that have the same capabilities.
So really, what you're saying is, with the collaboration of other agencies, it allows you to kind of set up a wide-reaching net of other agencies where you may be able to catch your quarry. Remember the days when you and I first started that, knowledge was power, and law enforcement didn't share our knowledge too often. And now that's the key to our success. The other thing that I really like about ALPR systems, especially fixed ALPR, is that it never takes a vacation. It never takes a break. It never gets diverted or is called off to take another call. It is always there. And you and I were talking recently about the days when we first started, where we would have an incident happen and we would send someone out to the edge of our municipality or jurisdiction and sit and wait for that car of interest to come through. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. We no longer have to do that, because this net of fixed cameras can actually do our surveillance for us, allowing us to be more efficient and have attention to the task at hand. Am I correct? Do you find that true in Michigan City?
Just to give you an example, that we actually, one time with our fixed ALPRs, we were able to get a hit on a vehicle that was flagged, and people in it were wanted, but they were part of a fraud network that was nationwide. And again, that information before wouldn't have been available to us like it was. I mean, nobody had to call us. We didn't have to put out a massive email or a directive or anything like that. It was just an officer linked up to the technology. He gets the notification or the hit, locates the vehicle, and now we're able to collaborate with other agencies, and we stop a fraud network that probably, if they wouldn't have been stopped, they probably would have not only came through our city but this county and caused more havoc. And that just shows you the power of this technology that we are able to use with the fixed ALPRs, not just, not in our city, but worldwide.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And staying with you, how do fixed ALPR systems contribute to improving public safety and reducing crime rates in high traffic areas?
It gives us that visibility, and it gives us that ability to collect the data we need in order to assess our resources. What I like about it is, again, you can be hooked up to that community or that area without actually being directly in it. It allows you to not only take care of that area, but any surrounding areas around it. And also it can, give you the capability of locating problems that might evolve in that area, but also stream out into the city. When you place your cameras, your fixed ALPR cameras, based on the data that you're assessed through reports, through cost of service, through complaints, and you place it strategically within areas. Again, it makes it policing more effective. Our community is cognizant to the fixed ALPRs and appreciate them. Our city council, again, is very appreciative of it, and and praise the technology we have. Very, very supportive, And again, we educate constantly on the results. We educate constantly on how it works. We do come across people who, fight against it sometimes, but I think everyday citizen that wants their community to be safe appreciates it. They compliment it, and they want more. Again, if it was up to me, I would hire 2,000 more officers, but along with that, I would also affect more of this technology too. So it helps us out a lot here in Michigan City. And again, I've heard these testimonies from other chiefs and other officers throughout the not only this county but throughout the nation about the effectiveness of fixed ALPRs.
Yeah. So do you find fixed ALPR is a crime deterrent?
Yes, we've actually seen some reduction in some of the crimes that we've had in the past based on our fixed ALPRs. We've also received information from our drug task force through their confidential informants who have given testimonies of people, avoiding the ALPRs or not doing as much as they would because they know that we have ALPRs in our community, trying to, take different routes. And again, I always give my put back on that is that, that just because we're not catching people all the time, but if we're also making it inconvenient for people to commit crimes. I mean, before, if you're trying to take the faster route and we got that locked down, now you got to take a longer route and you can get lost. You know what I'm saying? It can waste, it can have more time on it. And again, allow us to, catch you. So I think, just a deterrent of having them, the things that now the people who are committing these crimes have to think about, because we have the ALPRs and sometimes they just don't know where they're at. So it also has told, let people know that, we're not even going to try it here in Michigan City. We're going to try to go somewhere else.
Right. So you recently shared a story with me. It was really interesting where there's an apartment complex within your jurisdiction that they've installed their own ALPR systems privately, and what a deterrent it's been within that community and helped to keep people safe. You cited, and I don't want to regurgitate what may not be true, but you recited amazing statistics about how the calls for service have dropped dramatically you believe it's a result of the ALPR system that's fixed and in place there.
Yeah, and because those, the characters there in that area know now that those cameras are there, and they're actually, taking taking inventory of who's coming and going. And so now, you can't just, roll in there and, do what you want to do. I think people are more cognizant to that issue of having those ALPRs at the entrance. As you go in, you come out there, they are collecting that data. And that's one of the things this apartment complex came to us and met with us and wanted, to some suggestions on how to deter the crime in their, community, besides having a physical person there. And I told them again, we can't be there 24 hours, but those fixed ALPRs are there 24 hours, 7 days a week. They're working, they're collecting that data. And again, it gives us that information to follow up or also to do some proactive measures so that, people won't come in. So it's greatly reduced the crime, the nuisance. And I think that, it's allowing this apartment complex to put a different spin on to the community that's living there, and those who coming in that, saying we're going to keep you safe no matter what it takes.
That's a great message that they're sending without actually sending that message and verbalizing it. So Andy, I kind of want to come back to you. Can you provide a perspective about the initial setup and ongoing maintenance costs associated with fixed ALPR systems? And how does that compare to mobile or portable ALPR solutions?
Yeah, so from a fixed perspective, there's very little infrastructure required for a fixed ALPR system, right? These fixed solutions are solar powered, so you don't have to worry about there being a dedicated power connection there. And these fixed solutions also communicate over a cellular network, so you don't have to worry about having a broadband or a dedicated internet or communications link there at each location. So they're very it's a very simplified installation, not only from the camera, pole, and solar panel perspective, but you don't have to rely again on the power company to come out and run a power line, right? We all know that these utility companies are stretched just as thin as everyone else from a workforce perspective. So you're looking at several months delays. Same thing with telecommunication. And then again, from a mobile and a trailer perspective, you're actually having to take units out of service. You're not able to utilize those vehicles or that equipment as the systems are being deployed. So you're essentially down resources while you're performing that installation. Whereas from a fixed perspective, it's all very self-contained. And it's a relatively simple and straightforward installation.
So, talking about ongoing maintenance costs, you and I've talked, sometimes these ALPR systems like the telephone junction boxes alongside the highway seem to be a magnet for cars. So with utility technology, a fixed ALPR system is wiped out due to an automobile crash. What can an agency expect from utility because they don't actually purchase the technology? It's a service that's provided.
Yeah, and that's a great point, John. From a pricing and a cost perspective, we have kind of a hardware as a service and a software as a service model. So you're exactly right. When any ALPR system, not just fixed, is deployed, the agency isn't actually purchasing that software, or purchasing that hardware. And one of the great benefits of that is, one, it reduces that upfront cost of having to purchase the hardware, but it also eliminates that maintenance burden that hardware carries. We all know that hardware doesn't last forever. It all has an expected life, and when that hardware dies, someone's on the hook to pay for the replacement of that hardware. So being able to price this equipment as a service, we've really kind of eliminated that extra burden from for these agencies to have to make sure the batteries are still good, make sure the camera is okay. Like as you mentioned, these poles can become a magnet for vehicles on the road. Agencies don't have to worry about the cost and scheduling and getting someone out there to replace that burden ultimately falls back on the vendor.
And so I want to ask you this, Andy, how can fixed ALPR systems be integrated with existing law enforcement databases and systems for a seamless operation?
Yeah, and that's really where I think ALPR really kind of shines, right? I'm a big believer of what we call kind of an open system, meaning that data is shared in both directions. So as far as integrating to existing systems, ALPR we can integrate or should be integrated from an alerting perspective, meaning it doesn't matter what platform you're on, if it's a vendor specific platform or your digital evidence management system, those alerts should flow through into that system, and so should the vehicle lookup information. One thing we're big fans of is giving time back to officers and detectives, and one way we can do that is making sure that whatever system they're in, they have access to 100% of their information. I think we've all experienced this swivel chair effect when you are looking at one system where you've collected your evidence, and then you have to, I have to log into another system because my ALPR reads are just in that system. And then you have, the process of exporting and importing, which we all know, the defense attorneys love poking holes in that chain of custody once once a piece of evidence leaves one application and goes into another. So from my standpoint, that's really how an ALPR system can be very effective in integrating into kind of existing law enforcement applications from an alerting and then also from a vehicle lookup perspective.
Sure. So I'm curious, Andy, while you and I are discussing this here, from a broad perspective, because we know each individual state is a little bit different, has different requirements, and Chief Corley, we can ask you about Indiana's, but from a broad perspective, what are you finding? What kind of training or certification is necessary for law enforcement personnel to effectively use and maintain ALPR systems?
Yeah. So obviously, from a law enforcement perspective, right, all officers are CJIS certified, right? So that kind of goes without saying. This is, LPR systems are on hosted on CJIS compliant platforms. The data is shared in compliance with the CJIS standards. Agencies typically will have their kind of local ALPR policy for use and retention. A lot of times that policy will be dictated by a county or a state mandate, and what that policy does is that kind of explains or outlines how ALPR data is gathered, how it is used, and how long it is retained. And then also from a training perspective, it's good for the officers to be aware of not just what an ALPR system captures as far as a picture of the vehicle and the license plates and that vehicle metadata, but it's also good for them to be aware of what a system doesn't capture, right? It's good to know that, hey, an ALPR system is not doing facial recognition. An ALPR system is not looking up your vehicle in a DMV database and then, based on your driving history, deciding to do the analysis. It's good for them to know that this is a very objective evidence capture device. So yeah, that's, from my perspective, that's really kind of the training that law enforcement personnel would need. And then really from a license plate recognition platform perspective, I would say that there's probably little to no training that's needed, because the ALPR platform is really geared to do all of the heavy lifting that an officer had to do manually in the past, meaning, sitting at an intersection, jotting down the vehicles, trying to do that analysis themselves. Whereas today, it's as simple as a user, if they're granted that access, they can go into a system, they can set their alert preferences to say, hey, there's certain either vehicles or license plates I'm looking for, or maybe there are certain infractions I want to be alerted to. They save those preferences, and then the system does the work for them. And then it literally tells, alerts them in a kind of proactive manner, say, hey, I think we have found something you're looking for, which really allows, again, to the chief's perspective or point of, we need to be as efficient as possible with the manpower we have. So if I can kind of accomplish multiple tasks at once, that's a wonderful thing, and that's really what ALPR allows law enforcement to do.
Yeah, speaking of the efficiencies, we've all been talking that the most efficient of officers and or officer dispatcher duo can run a maximum of 150 queries per hour through a Bureau of Motor Vehicles database query or series of queries, whereas ALPR they can manage 3,600 queries in an hour. So the efficiency is absolutely unmatched and allows officers to be freed up. So on this topic, Chief, I'd like to ask you kind of your perspective. Any certifications specific to the state of Indiana? And is this training covered in, say, an FTO program with you?
And so, Andy covered a lot, but, the biggest thing for us is just making sure our people know how to use the technology properly, but also be aware of our policies and procedures when it comes down to using it, using the technology and not abusing the technology. I mean, when you talk about, the audits that are, subject to be conducted, to make sure that people aren't searching or using it to spy on a boyfriend or girlfriend, or outside of their realms of, conducting their law enforcement duties, abusing that, having those audits in place, and just, knowing, the power of using it effectively, and also, the power of being able to, expand the use of technology. So the use part is primarily big for us, knowing the policy that Andy talked about, understanding that you're subject to audit, and and knowing that's something that we do on a regular, or we can do when we suspect any misuse, is one of the primary things that we concentrate on here. State of Indiana doesn't have any specific training that we have to do. But again, the state does have, policy mandates when it comes down to having a policy in place for the use of technology, just like any other thing that you would enact in your department. You should always have policy when it comes down to your officers using it in their duties. And so that's how we conduct ourselves here at Michigan City Police Department, with, making sure our policies are up to date, and we have the best practice policies, out there when it comes to the use of this technology, and keeping our people informed of any changes in those policies or any changes in the technology as it grows. So again, so that we can be as efficient as possible and also effective as possible.
Yeah, and I know, Michigan City Police Department certainly has very strict and robust policies in place to safeguard the public from overreach. And I do know that, the state of Indiana, a third, for lack of a better term, neutral and detached party comes in and conducts those audits to make sure that that data collection is being done in compliance and being done properly and not being used maliciously. So that's really important. And I think most states have same or similar policies. So, Andy, what privacy and data protection measures should be in place when deploying ALPR systems to ensure compliance with legal standards?
Yeah. So one of the big things, and Chief kind of touched on it, but it is, making sure that you've assigned the appropriate permissions to officers who are able to access the LPR data. One thing that we see is, just because you are, an officer at an agency, it doesn't necessarily mean you should have access to the LPR data. So you can kind of control that data that way, or access to the data that way. Another aspect is whenever a license plate query is being performed, the system should, one, be logging who is performing that query, but then the user who is performing the query must enter a reason or a case number, or both, as far as justification to why are they looking for this specific information, whether it's license plate related or vehicle related, or really any combination. And then another big piece to kind of ensure the privacy and kind of the safeguarding of the data is to make sure you've established a retention policy. And essentially what that means is, how long is this single LPR transaction or vehicle capture gonna live in the system, right? This data does not live in perpetuity. It does not live forever. There has to be kind of an end of life for this data to really ensure you don't have this misuse of it. And then lastly, auditing, right? So I mentioned, certain users should have the ability to access the LPR data. They should then be entering a reason or case number, kind of a justification. Well, that should be audited, and that shouldn't, in my opinion, that audit should be kind of come routine for the agency, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, just to ensure that there's not a potential loophole or a potential misuse issue before a state or a independent audit occurs, and you've maybe not been aware of some potential misuse. So those would, to me, be kind of the highlights for ensuring privacy and really kind of making sure that data is not misused.
Yeah, and I want to mention too that one of utilities partners is Lexipol, and Lexipol has very strong policies based on best practices and court tested throughout the country for agencies that don't have policies that are looking to implement ALPR technology. You must have a policy in place before you implement, and Lexipol would be a place that we would suggest that you turn to look to see what they have. They would be great with any agency. Couple other things that we want to talk about before we close out today. We want to talk about some of the common challenges about the deployment of ALPR systems, specifically fixed ALPR systems. what are the best practices? I'm curious from a broader perspective with you, Andy, and more specifically with you, Chief Corley, finding the optimal locations for the installation of fixed ALPR. How do you go about doing that? What's your suggestions?
So what we did here is basically we took our data, and also we had the thinking of, and prior to taking the data, we thought of, it's kind of like the analogy that we used here is it's kind of like securing your home. You'll start on the outside and you'll work your way inside. So that's what we did. We made sure that coming in and out of our city was covered first. And then after we got that assessed and measured out, we then looked at some major thoroughways that people travel commonly, and where we have some, might have some issues or might have the ability to catch the data that we need. And then we started going into the areas where we will have the most concern or where we need it the most. And we use, once we started getting more specific into areas, we started using the data that we have, the crime statistics that we have, the numbers that we keep for calls of service, and certain type of crimes that we're trying to avoid or at least prosecute. And so we put that all together, and again, we start mapping those areas out. When you start with a certain amount of cameras, you think it sounds like it's a lot, but when you start looking at, a intersection that's 4 ways and you want to put it all 4 ways, you determine now you have to choose the direction that might be the best if you want to get more use for your cameras, your ALPRs, in those areas. So that's how we started, is to worked our way our outside, and we started working into some of our areas. And again, once we got more into our neighborhoods and communities within inside our perimeter, we use our data and our cost of service numbers.
I appreciate you sharing that blueprint with us. It really truly is best practice, because the Michigan City Police Department, it sets the example when it comes to crime deterrence and how you've attacked some of your crime issues within the city. And you have been remarkable about bringing your violent crime and other crime statistics down. It's because you're being so proactive. So thanks, Chief, for sharing that with us. So the broader perspective, Andy, where do you stand, or what advice would you give?
It's really hard to follow up that response from the chief, because he really nailed it.
He nailed it.
He's exactly right. You start with that perimeter and really kind of work your way in. If you want to kind of maybe talk specifics, from camera placements, Chief had mentioned intersections. Typically, the fixed solution would be just beyond an intersection, or kind of along roads where the traffic is free flowing. You're not really going to get the true advantage of a fixed LPR system if it's kind of constantly watching vehicles stuck at a red light. You kind of want those cameras or systems deployed just beyond red lights, or maybe you could deploy them on highway on and off ramps, just so you're kind of tracking who's coming in and out of your city or your county using the highways. But the chief nailed it, where you want to kind of deploy this net around your city and then use that data to kind of see how much tighter of a net you need, so you can then really start tracking those movements of vehicles of interest.
Perfect. So, Chief, as we wind down this conversation, I've been saving this one for you. Let's put this in a little bit of perspective, okay? You're located in Northwest Indiana along the southern tip of Lake Michigan. Michigan City is to the Western Great Lakes what Buffalo is to the Eastern Great Lakes. So you're in the snow belt. You get a lot of snow every year. And we at Utility have talked to a lot of chiefs, a lot of sheriffs, a lot of decision makers from the north, and many of them have concerns about fixed or mobile ALPR. And these are the questions, these are the concerns that we get. And I'm going to list all the questions and all the concerns, and I want you to kind of address it from your perspective as a leader who's been there, done that. So chiefs, sheriffs, decision makers say, we're afraid that we're going to invest in cameras that aren't going to work because of poor visibility, because we get a lot of snow in the wintertime. License plates from vehicles that we might want to monitor. The plates are obscured due to snow being built up in the back. or there's not enough sunlight here this time of year to power the solar powered units. And, or here's a big one, we don't want our officers tied up during a major snow event, chasing ALPR hits. We want them available. We want them in a safe location, and we want them to be able to respond to traffic hazards, calls for service, and crashes. So how do you at Michigan City, who receives more snow than anybody other than probably Buffalo, how do you deal with those issues October through April?
And you know, you asked me that question. You know, this year we had a record high of 3 feet of snow for a weekend
In one
in
event.
Michigan City.
Yeah.
And so, you know, those are things that prior to initiating our programs with the ALPRs that we knew about. So we have been very lucky and blessed here to be kind of proactive about it. Several different ways I'm gonna explain to you is when it comes down to some, you know, our people, you know, chasing the ALPR hits, you know, during the snowstorms, our supervisors, our commanders tell our folks, you know, be smart during these times. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not telling you not to do certain things, but think about what you don't want to tie yourself up doing because of the conditions of the roads. You know what I'm saying? We want to avoid accidents, you know, we want to
Prioritize.
Yeah, we prioritize, right? Exactly, prioritize. So I think, you know, it's not so much of us, you know, telling our officers what not to do, but just giving them that decision-making authority themselves and putting it into their brain to say, hey, think about how your day is going to do and what you're going to react to and how you're going to use your equipment for that day. Because every day is not a day to go out and, you know, try to save the world. You know, every day is a day, you know, to be available for the world, and more so than other days are more than common than others. And then secondly, you know, we have an administrative team here who checks on the technology. So, and it's as easy as just, you know, pulling up the operating system, the platform, and just looking to see what ALPRs are functioning and what are not functioning, any problems, and then we troubleshoot those. And then because prior to deploying our ALPRs, we had a community input. We did town hall meetings, and everybody, but between the town hall meetings and the city council meetings and the other, meetings that we talked about the technology in, people know about APR. So now we have not only our officers, on the lookout for it, we have other city departments that as they're out and about, they're looking at our LPRs. Are they in areas where, you might see one damaged, or you might see one that's not operating right, or anything wrong, and they're helping us report that. Even we've had several neighborhood associations or neighbors, or I should say citizens, just call in and say, hey, your cameras, there's a whole bunch of snow around your ALPR that might be affecting it, or, it's not getting a lot of sun here, or the trees are overgrown. You might want to look into it. So, we've had so much community help with making sure we maintain them that we haven't had those problems. But that's because we were privy to some of the problems that have been at other places, and we were proactive about making sure that we put some measures in place so that we wouldn't have those problems. Not saying we haven't had any problems, but nothing major to stop the operations of our ALPRs.
Sure, and if there have been weather-related problems, you would have experienced it. And I told you that one agency leader that I had a conversation with, he said, I'm just afraid that the ALPR mobile units are just going to get packed with snow and they're not going to be able to read. And I said, well, if you get that much snow, don't you expect that your officers are going to clear their headlights and their windshield and their overhead red and blue lights? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, while they're doing that, why can't they just clear the mobile ALPR unit as well? It just really is simple. Where there's a will, there's a way, and maybe you've got to put out a directive to your troops. Hopefully you don't, but if needed, that's what you can do to overcome that problem. I really enjoyed this conversation today. We've learned so much as a result of the expertise that you both have provided today. And I want to thank everyone for joining us in our discussion. Utility, we understand that ALPR technology is vital in investigations, as over 70% of all crimes involve the use of a motor vehicle. Our Pulsar fixed ALPR solution offers law enforcement critical insights and real-time data and it significantly reduces response time, which increases the likelihood of successful outcomes. ALPR, as we've learned, is a force multiplier, and it enhances safety. Again, thank you, Chief Corley and Andy Justin, for joining us today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I hope that we can get together again soon, talked about some other relative conversations, and let me remind everybody, please remain safe and be vigilant at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, John.